Hello, everybody. Welcome to Coffee Chat with
Good
Lindsey and Dietary.
afternoon.
Good afternoon, good morning, and good night.
That's right. I feel like I'm about to have the hiccups. So if something weird happens, I feel it coming on me.
Don't be too concerned.
Okay, cool.
Chris Bear is here on time today. So
Wow.
you're
I
like,
don't see him in the chat. For some reason, my chat only has
oh,
a couple people.
he's my first chat up here.
Wow.
Yeah, it's 9:55. He was even here early. Um, oh yeah, for a second it looked like Lindsey was sleeping.
I was
Could
feeling
happen.
I was feeling a hiccup really strongly, just like trying to work its way from my sternum out.
Perfect timing, you know.
I was like, oh, we're about to have some real painful hiccups. Okay,
Oh,
answer this for me in the chat if you're around for the first few minutes. As a fully grown human, how
okay.
often do you get the hiccups?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
I'm going to argue a minimum of 16 per week for me.
Really? That's a
That
lot.
might that might be hyperbolic, okay, but between like 6 and 16 times per week.
Okay. I feel like I can go weeks without getting hiccups, and then I'll just randomly get them. And
Oh.
yeah, it's so rare.
Yeah. I think I I think it might be evidence that I talk faster than my body allows. And so I suck air in at an inappropriate moment during speech. And then it just kind of like keeps going.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It's your
just a
body
thing.
talking to you. Okay. Good morning, Patty. And Bonita is here, and Kelly is here. So glad to be able to catch a live. Sing It is here and wants to know, as always, what's in our cups. What you got?
Decaf black coffee. I will attempt to bloop.
There it is. And I just have
Decaf black.
coffee with cream.
We're
Regular, my
just
regular.
we're just being normal. Just
Mm-hmm.
typical. Can I just
Normies.
also tangent off of that? I
Okay.
feel like the phrase normal or the term is the right word. Term normal is probably like misused. I feel like
Oh,
it's typical, not
okay.
normal.
Okay.
But I could be way off. And that's a
Yeah. Well,
tangent
it
for
depends
another
on what
day.
you're talking about. Kind of like the average person doesn't really exist. There's just all the extremes. And
Yeah.
then that average person is like a unicorn. They're not even real.
Right, right. But the typical would have to be like what? Not the mean, but it would have to be the mode, the most
There you go.
frequent,
There you go.
data point.
Very
Look at
important.
y'all getting all this math terminology.
Also moms.
Of course, we'll throw in some Saxon math here and there.
Of course. Lisa is here from Idaho. Sing It says we're on the opposite sides today. I mean, we always just like to keep you guys on your toes.
Crisscross.
Like, make sure you really know which one of us is Neely and which one of us is Lindsay, because
That's
sometimes
right.
it can be hard to tell.
It can be. I mean, even our hair is parted on the same side.
Yeah. Okay. Evelyn says, hello, put you both on notifications. Had to choose which channel to watch on. Yep. That's the way it
Well, we
goes.
appreciate that you did have to make that tricky decision,
Yeah, you
but
can
that
always
means that you care, and we love that. Thank you.
Let's see. Donna says it's been months for the hiccups. I assume.
Hiccups.
So yeah, I can't believe you get them so often.
I must be an outlier.
Okay, Chris says, as a tall person or a tall human, I get hiccups maybe 1 to 2 times a year. Does tallness have something to do with it?
No, I think it actually happens to, okay, so a little anatomy from the way I understand it. I could be wrong, but from what I understand, we have the typical human,
Mhm,
has
mhm.
2 lungs, and beneath those 2 lungs is what is called a diaphragm, a thin muscle running underneath the lungs. And
Mhm.
in that diaphragm, there happens to be a nerve, and it can frequently get out of sync with the way that the diaphragm needs to drop and raise to
Okay.
adjust how the air flows in and out of the lungs. So, what happens for me? Did you hear that little? kind of a catch thing. Like, I think
Mhm.
that's what happens is that I breathe at the wrong time. Like my diaphragm drops or raises at the opposite time of when it needs to. And so then it gets out of sync and it causes the hiccups.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Well, there you go. Anatomy and math all in one day, and we haven't even been on more than 10 minutes.
Sorry, my brain just glitched. Yes, anatomy and math all together now. All together.
Sing It says hiccuping once a month for sure. Yep, that's about where I'm at, I think. Kelly says
I'm just a really good hiccuper. Real good.
Oh, interesting. I don't
Say
know
that again.
I get, obviously burping from carbonation, but I don't know about hiccups. That's interesting. Sharon says rare for her, almost never. Lisa says maybe over a year or more. That's crazy.
That is
Who
crazy
knew?
to me.
Who knew? Ron is here. Hello. Deb is here waving from Oregon. I'll wave from Oregon as well.
I'll wait from the Ohio, the other O state.
Yes. Yeah. Talking about average people. It's the truth.
Way to really bring some sobriety to the moment.
Yeah, that really brings it home. Ellie is here from Nourishment Redacted. Hey.
Hello.
Sharon says Lindsey is ignoring her chat. Are you ignoring your chat?
I have no idea. I'm watching it, but I've also discovered that whenever we're doing our live stream together, if we're both trying to, like acknowledge the chat, then we just talk over top of each other over and over again. And then there's a lot of like just disjointed conversation. So I kind of take a back seat on the chat and allow you to sift through it.
Yes. And even though we're streaming on both of our channels, we can both see all of the comments together on our side. I know that when you're watching on, my channel or Lindsey's, you only see comments,
the chats on those respective channels,
but we actually have them all running together, which is kind of nice. I wish everyone had that option.
Yeah, it does make it a lot more easy to, just sort of like make sure that we're seeing everything, but it is tricky if you don't have everything collated like we do.
Yes. Ron says watching from Massachusetts and it's 95 today. We're going to
let's have a detour. We're talking about the weather. Oh my stars.
Yes.
We went camping. Is this the second week we've been home? No, I missed last week. So it was last week, beginning of last week. And it was in the 50s as the high where we were camping in Ohio. And then in the evenings, it got down to like 28 degrees one of the nights. Nuts. Like we are in mid-June, right? Like I expected that when I lived in Wyoming. I expected that when I lived in Wisconsin. I even expected it a little bit at the coastal Alaskan areas that we've lived in. But I didn't expect it in Ohio. What? It was so cold. And then we come back and it's like, oh, here's your heat wave that you were actually looking for. Here you go. That's what you wanted whenever you were tubing down a river.
Yes.
Now you get to have it when you're not in the nice, cool, flowing waters.
Yeah. On Monday, we went berry picking with, are you okay?
Did you hear that?
No.
There was a bird back there. A bird flew in the window.
Oh dear. Is it alive?
Yeah, it seems to be a little bit shaken. It's just standing there.
Oh no.
I mean, it's got
into our window this morning.
Its eyes are blinking properly. It's looking around and its tail is doing this number. So I think it's okay. But wow.
Wow. Speaking of birds, we have ducklings in our pond.
I saw your reel.
I've been posting videos all over Instagram because they're so cute. So we have a mommy ducky with 9 baby ducklings.
Whoa.
And we have a pond in the back, and then right across the street, there's a pond. And so every day they've made the trek across the street and all the way to the pond and back. And so we'll be, doing dishes or something. And then someone starts freaking out.
It's a parade.
Yeah, they're here. But the thing is we have to watch because the cats will start stalking them. And we're like, oh man, we will never forgive you if you hurt one of those baby ducklings.
Right. I mean,
so anyways,
good on you for having that predator instinct, but also like maybe.
Yeah, mice, moles, all fine. Baby ducks, baby bunnies, they've done that before. Not okay. Simply not okay. I mean, come on, guys.
Yeah.
Sing It said, missed you last week, but the interview with Rachel was awesome. Yes, it was. We had a lot of fun. I mean, Rachel is just so easy to talk to. Like we could have.
And I'm not.
Well, I talk to you every week because you're easy to talk to.
I'm teasing.
Because you're easy to talk to. No, but yeah, we had a really fun conversation, and anyone who hasn't listened to that should go listen because okay, so we all have YouTube channels and we're all sharing whatever current, and sometimes it's just good to go back to the beginning and listen to where you've come from, because like I told her, I don't ever think of her as, I forget what her highest weight was, but as an obese person. Like I look at her and I see Rachel and she's a skinny little beautiful thing. And I don't think of her that way. So to hear like where people have come from, it's just good to hear it multiple times and to kind of get a refresh on their story. And anyways, we talked about a lot of stuff, actually. There's a whole lot of topics. So definitely check that one out if you missed it. And we'll have to do another Girl Talk episode where we have her and maybe some others come through.
Yeah.
That would be really fun.
Super fun.
Okay. Evelyn says, talking about terms, did you know a la mode does not mean with ice cream? It means the modern style that's popular.
I did know that.
I did not know that.
I did. It's French for of the world, I believe.
Oh, sounds great.
Follow for more random information you did not need and did not ask for.
American. So it's, it doesn't sound world of the world. It sounds very American. How would you like it? American style. That means with ice cream on top. Oh, goodness.
A la ice cream.
Yeah. Let's see. Chris says tall as opposed to adult. Yeah, sometimes you have to make that distinction. It's important.
Yep.
Let's see. Oh, Miriam is here. Hello.
Hi, friend. I keep pulling up, like I keep having a moment in my head where I'm like, oh, I gotta text the Keto Chows and you and like say like and text something, and then somebody comes and interjects their thoughts into my brain at that moment, and I'm like, oh, well, I lost whatever it was that I was thinking about.
Yeah. So my interview with Chris and Miriam is up on the Keto Chow YouTube, and yours is still coming. I'm on the edge of my seat waiting for
yours. They could have scrapped it because it could have just been one of those things that's like, that doesn't really add value. We're gonna just keep on trucking.
No, I'm sure it's still coming, and they're just making us wait for it.
I don't know if they had to do so much editing and so much AI generation to make it make sense. They were like, this is taking a lot more time and resources than we had budgeted.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Ooh, Evelyn is prep cooking for BBBE halfway through the month. So far, awesome. That's great. That is great. Let us know what you're prepping. I would love to hear, because you can go real simple with BBBE, burger patties and boiled eggs and stuff like that. Or you can, go nuts and do some crazy recipes. So I'd love to hear what you're prepping.
Follow-up question to your prep. How much prep work do you do in advance? Do you like to do it like 1 week at a time, just a few days at a time? I am curious.
Yeah, if I'm doing anything like carnivore, very meat heavy, I like to just cook one meal at a time because meat always tastes so much better freshly cooked. So as long as I remember,
it's still too hot to actually eat.
Yeah, as long as I remember to take it out of the freezer so it's defrosted, then it's pretty quick to cook up a steak or something. But
Yes.
yeah, that's what I tend to do. If I'm eating more keto and such, then like casseroles and stuff, that's good to make up in advance. Although you could probably do a BBBE casserole with eggs and meat.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's see. Ellie has a question, a mom question. How many children do you have, and do you feel that big families with many children are more fulfilling? How do you know or how did you know? How do you know your family was complete? You want to tackle that one?
Ah, well, I think that your paradigm tends to help inform your decisions. So I grew up in a household with only two kids. Um, Mom, dad, me, and my sister. My cousins, it was just aunt, uncle, and my two cousins. Actually, every single like cousin group that of all of us that are on the same family tree line, we are all like we're just a set of two siblings, and two seems to be like a very common thing to do in the 80s and 90s,
Mhm.
at least from the paradigm in which I came from. And that was too many prepositions. Okay, so for me, the idea of having two seemed very normal, very typical. And so once we had two, we were like, yeah, this is great. We're man on man. There's no zone defense yet. We feel good about that. And we never really tried for a third. And then God said, here you go. And we were like, what do we do now? and and the reality is like she is our family would have been incomplete without her. And once she was born, we were like, okay, this is a lot to chew off because, with my husband traveling frequently, I am the primary adult in the household. So we would travel together and it would be only me. And for me, handling the three girls seemed like a sweet spot. And we thought this is where we need to land. And there was just peace when it came to stopping right there. But I don't think that there is a quote unquote correct number of children to have or to not have. I think that it's really just what you and your spouse really kind of feel at peace
Mhm.
about.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think that, bigger families are more fulfilling necessarily. I think children are good, and I think that it's good to have kids, but like
Yes.
you said, it depends on your paradigm and what works for your life and for your family. I didn't think I was gonna have a lot of kids. Somehow that's how it often works as well. It's like the ones that think they're going to have a bunch, they end up not, and then the ones that think they're not going to have any, they end up having a bunch. And you know, I think God likes to play around with us and be like, "You thought, but I thought."
Right.
So,
But
anyways,
I'm the one responsible here.
yeah, but I do think as far as knowing when you're done, what always was happening with me whenever I would have another baby, I was like, I know I want more. And I was worried that I would always feel that way, that I would,
Mm.
because you have to stop eventually. I mean, you can't just keep on
Eventually, you
going.
run out of eggs.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I was worried that it would, I'd have that like hole in my heart forever. But it really did just, go away. While I was pregnant with Levi, I just knew that he was the last one, and that's all I needed. And so I was really thankful for that because that feeling of, feeling like you want to have another, that would be really hard to live with forever,
Mm.
and not be able to. So that would be hard. So, but when for whatever reason, when I was pregnant with him, it was like, nope, this is it. And it wasn't
Yeah.
just that he was a boy. I mean, maybe that played into it a little bit, like, because we had 4 girls and he was our only boy, and so we finally had a boy. But that wasn't the primary thing. It wasn't like, "Oh, we finally got our boy, we're done." It was just
Yeah.
that was it. And
Right.
Chris said something similar. He said, "We had children until we had the last one, and we knew when that was." And that's exactly how it was with us too.
Yeah.
And so, uh Ellie says down here, I'm questioning if my family is complete. I keep flip flopping. That is a clue to me that the family is not. So, you know, keep an open mind there. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's like there's never a good time for a baby. I mean, that's just
Yep.
financially, there's rarely a time where it feels like, oh yeah, this is easy, or with your schedule, oh yeah, this is easy. That's not how kids are. So,
Nope.
sometimes you just are like, okay, well, I guess this is it. And then I think, you'll know when you know. And I do have a lot of sympathy for those that are not able to have kids and they do feel like that they want to have more and then are unable to. I can only
Yeah.
imagine how difficult that would be. So I do have a lot of
Right.
compassion for that. But, if you're still feeling like it's not quite complete, maybe it's not. And that's okay. Yeah.
But it's also okay to pause and just like rest in the unknowing.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
that we as humans are very good at that.
Yeah. Yeah, true. And then there are people that definitely glorify having a lot of kids, and kind of look down on people who choose not to. And I'm not on board with that either,
No.
even though I do think children are a gift from God and that they are good and that, not only is it good for us to raise up another generation, but it's also good for ourselves and our,
Growth.
maturity and all. Like, there's so many ways that it's good for us. So I think kids are good, but no judgment on family size or anything like that. Whatever you're given is, the right thing for you, and it doesn't look the same for everybody.
For sure. That's a really good question.
Yeah, it is. Chris says we had some audio issues with Lindsay's interview, still working to clean that up. I was worried
It's
that they were
me.
going to
Hi.
have audio issues with
I'm
mine
your
because
friend.
I kept hitting my mic.
Oh,
I'm not used to using a lapel mic, and so I just kept bumping it. I was like, "Dang it, not again."
well, I kept like putting my hands in front of my face, or not face, but like, I kept talking with
Mhm.
my hands from what I remember because that day was a blur.
It
Uh,
was. It was.
so I'm like, I mean, it had to have been, I had to have done things wrong. We got to do that photo shoot, and I'm still fearful that none of the pictures actually came out because all I did was this the whole time. Like I couldn't hold still to save my life, and I feel so bad.
Oh, good times, good times.
At
Yeah,
least it's
when you're
on brand.
Platte River Keto is here. Hello, Scott.
Hi.
Um, let's see. Yvonne says to Ellie, after our fourth son, we gave up and said the only way to get a girl is adoption. 16 years later, we adopted our fifth child, a boy. And 5 years later, we got our grandson. Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, we were convinced that we were gonna have a fifth girl. Jeff, more than I was. Like, he was just like, "Yep, that's it. That's all I do. It's fine." He had made peace with it. And then
To be honest,
all of a sudden we got the most boy that ever walked the face of the
Boyd.
earth.
For us, we were actually like really apprehensive that Lauren would have been a boy just
Mm,
because we already had girl life in
mhm.
our whole like world. We were not prepared to shift gears and say, okay, now we have to do outside of the body energy versus like inside feelings energy. You know what I mean? It was just like I don't know. And we never found the genders out of our kids before they were actually like out of the womb.
Yeah.
And so for the whole pregnancy with Lauren, I was just like, I know it's going to be a boy. I just know it's going to be a boy, and we're going to be great. And da 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 da. And whenever they were like, it's a girl, I was like, oh, thank you, Lord.
Dodge that bullet.
We get to be a traveling sorority. It's great. It's great. And I can't wait to have sons-in-law, and I will love them tremendously, but
Yes.
also like for my hands-on raisin experience, I'd like to keep things all like, okay, we're in this trajectory.
Yes. You'll probably get grandsons also. So
Maybe,
you have that to look
but maybe
forward to.
not.
I mean, maybe
My
not, but I mean, you got 3 girls to have babies, to have grandbabies. There's gotta be at
sure,
least
my
1 boy.
maybe my dad had only daughters, and his daughters have only
Oh,
daughters.
wow. Yeah,
So
yeah.
we could be just the line of daughters.
It could be. It's possible, but I'm gonna hold out for that little Murphy grandson.
Oh gosh.
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be so, so great. Um, let's see. Sing It says, so both of you ladies planned the first one. We have none, can't, and that's great. But mom told me I was not planned. Then we just kept coming. Oh, that's funny. So we had our first daughter just a year and a month after we got married. So it happened pretty quick. Um, and it was just like we knew we wanted to have kids, and we were like, okay, yeah, we want to have kids. So we'll just go off birth control and kind of see what happens. And it was the very next month we found out we were pregnant. We found out what happens real quick.
For us, we were married for about 2 years, decided to start trying, and then it took another 2 years before we actually got pregnant. So for us, it was sort of a delayed process.
Mm.
And then with our second, we started trying whenever our first was about 2 years old, and that was another delayed process. Or maybe she was only a year and a half. She was pretty young. No, we were still in Arizona. Okay.
Mm.
She was not even not even a year and a half old, and we started trying again. And yeah, so that took us a while. Both go arounds. And then with Lauren, we were like, we are all done. There's no more diapers. Everybody sleeps through the night for the most part. Let's just hang it right here. And then it was like, surprise!
So fun. So fun.
We're
Yeah. And
doing
so
this.
sometimes you
Okay.
think you're done, and you're not. And then you have the next one, and you're like, how did I ever live without
That's right. That's
this
right.
special little gift that I didn't expect was coming? So there's all kinds of ways that families are made up, and there's
Right.
no bad ones. So it's great. Let's see. I did have a topic that I wanted to bring up, but I wanted to make sure
Oh,
there wasn't any more questions that we needed to get to. Okay. So my question for everyone, and you can answer this in the chat if you want, is keto, or you could do carnivore if you're carnivore, is keto or carnivore restrictive? What do you think? Like right off the top of your head, what do you say?
I want to count to 20. So it's interesting that you bring up this idea.
Okay. Uh-oh. We haven't talked about this ahead of time, by the way.
We did not. And yet this has been ruminating in my brain for
Of
the
course it
past
has.
72 hours.
Of course it has.
Okay, so I had this whole thought process of the fact that we choose to not eat specific food groups so as to not create a biochemical response in our bodies in a specific area, right? And when you hear the word restrictive, it can be taken about 17 different ways. And so it's one of those things where it's like restrictive in what respect? And I've kind of had this thought in my head about all these different diet programs. And I came across a video that described one specific diet program from the 60s and 70s, and the detail that was expected from the people on that eating plan, that diet, was insane restriction.
Mhm.
Specific foods in a certain number of times per week. Only X number of this, could not have this particular type of food paired with other types of food. No snacking, no this, no that, no this, no that, no this, no that. Just hyper specific. But people didn't have to think about what they were going to do. They just had to receive the information and do it. So it was freedom from thinking, but restriction from food. But then People look at the keto and the carnivore diet as a very hyper restrictive thing because we cut out specific food groups.
Mhm.
But then it's like the amount of freedom in not having to think about, am I going to choose to eat the Cheez-Its or not? Like I'm free from having to think about that. It
Mhm.
doesn't fall within the parameters that I'm choosing. So then no, I have the freedom to not eat that.
Mhm.
Or I'm restricted from eating that because I want freedom in another area. And it's kind of like this constant cycle of,
Mhm.
okay, if I want freedom in this bucket, then I'm
Mhm.
going to have to pull back and restrict in this bucket. Because ultimately I want this big giant tub to be filled with, whatever. Or that analogy actually didn't go the way I wanted it to.
I
It doesn't
understand
matter.
where you're going with it. Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it's like, is restriction only defined as specific food groups or all food groups? Or is it defined as limited calories versus whatever you need for satiety? Or is it restricted to your amount of time put into preparing something or emotion involved in something or freedom from not having to do any of that? Like it could just get hyper complicated.
Yes. Yes. Okay, I wanna read some of these comments before I give my 2 cents. Um,
Okay.
Risa says, "I don't find low carb to be restrictive at all, just have to be creative." Chris says, "Lots of things seem restrictive on the surface, but then you realize that restriction allows you to not be sick. Amputations due to complications from diabetes are extremely restrictive." Yes.
100%.
Ellie says, "I eat carnivore and it's not restrictive. Keto is more restrictive because you have to count carbs and stay away from the substitute foods. I would go back to keto if I needed. If needed, I enjoy carnivore a lot." Okay, so Ellie says, "No, not restrictive." Um, I think
Oh,
it's
can we pause for 2 seconds?
yeah,
We also have a bias toward it because we've seen positive impact.
yes,
So I
yes.
think that is something else to keep in mind.
Yes. Okay, Sing It says, "It depends on my hormones. Most of the time, I feel that there's plenty to eat on keto for, but then it'll hit me just why can't I have a donut? It passes, then I'm fine again." Scott says, "I would say not restrictive to me. I am more free because of keto because I was a slave to my carb addiction. Just couldn't stop eating and was restricted in my movement slash health, etc. prior to keto." Yep. Um, what? Fill the giant tub with cheese sauce.
We'll work on that analogy.
um,
We'll keep working it out.
yeah. Bubble Stuff says, "My 2 cents. You learn to adapt to a new way of learning to cook and make things in a creative way, like egg noodles made of eggs, egg noodles from eggs from a Mediterranean viewpoint." Yes. Ellie says, "Totally biased." Yes, when you experience, the benefits, you can't help but get biased. Only as restrictive as you make it for you. I'm ketovore and still gain weight due to overeating. Yeah, I could do that too, for sure. For sure. Okay, let's see. Evelyn said, "My sister in law told my father in law he was being restricted by us because we didn't let him have all the fruit. His answer was, 'But I eat 3 packs of bacon a week and I'm healthier.'" I love that. I love that. Okay.
That is it.
Yes.
We're
Okay.
gonna give that this one. Confetti. 3 packs
So
of bacon.
my my thoughts, because I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and I've seen this from a lot of people. So this isn't calling any specific creator out. I've heard from so many different people using this same language. But I think language is really important. And the words that we use, we should really think carefully about what we're trying to communicate. So
Yes.
what triggered this week was just a video that said, basically, is carnivore restrictive? The answer is no, because
Mhm.
you get to eat there's a whole list of all of these foods that you can eat on carnivore, and that you feel so much better, so you're not restricted physically. And I don't think that's going to
Fly.
convince anybody outside of the keto world. Because, for example, if someone came to me and said, the vegan diet is not restrictive because look at this giant list of plants you get to eat.
Options.
You don't get to eat meat, but look at all of these things that you do get to eat. That's not going to convince me at all.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to convince me to go vegan is to tell me why the restrictions are worth it.
Oh, that's a good way to phrase that.
Because diets are restriction.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even like I was just trying to think through this today. Even if I say the proper diet for a dog is this, this, and this, I'm restricting, even though I'm not talking about like losing weight or calorie restriction or anything like that, I'm restricting down this infinite number of foods that could be consumed to this list that is good for a dog. That's restriction. The keto diet, the whole concept of the keto diet is we restrict foods that are high in carbs that would keep us out of ketosis.
Mm-hmm.
Carnivore diet, like to even say the words, the carnivore diet is not restrictive, I think is not true. Like just on its face. Now, I'm not talking about how you feel about it or,
Sure.
how good physically you're not restricted. The food choices on the carnivore diet are restricted. And that's fine. And on keto, they're restricted. On vegan, they're restricted. That is a diet. A diet is a food restriction. You're saying these are the foods that I eat on this diet, and these are the foods that I don't eat on this diet. And so to try to convince someone that keto is not restrictive, especially when they're sitting there eating the standard American diet and eating donuts and pasta and bread, I don't even think that would compute for them. Of course it's restrictive. Of course it's restrictive. But when you say having this kind of restriction causes me to feel this or has helped me to overcome this health issue so that my life is lived in an unrestricted way, then that might convince them to implement that restriction. So I struggle when people come into a diet and they've been told that it's not restrictive. And then when they start doing it for a little while, they get to this point of feeling like, because we all do. And I mean, maybe some less than others for sure. But as like even Kelly Hogan, like I always go back to her as like the ultimate carnivore who's never wavered in her, strictness of her carnivore diet. But she's talked about smelling peanut butter and thinking it smells good and like wishing she could eat it.
Yeah.
But she chooses the restriction of not eating the peanut butter because of something else. And so when we're told this diet is not restrictive, as soon as you get to that point, wherever it is in your journey where it feels restrictive, you're going to be like, wait a minute, I was told this wasn't restrictive. And, and that, anyways, that's what I've been ruminating on. So is it even helpful to use the term restrictive to talk about a diet? To be like, this diet is not restrictive, but this diet is restrictive, as if restrictive is bad.
Well, I think that those two topics actually are not apples to apples, because if you're saying this diet is restrictive, this diet is not restrictive, then are you using the same parameters by which to compare them, right? So it's like,
right,
the not restrictive diet over here may limit food choices, but I feel freer as a human. But over here, they limit food, therefore you're restricted. And it's like, you can't compare those two things.
Yeah, like Ellen
at all.
She feels less restricted on an actually more restricted food list. But somehow it feels less restrictive.
Better. Right.
Isn't that crazy?
It is, but it also shows one of the flaws in human logic, like when we're trying to um when we're trying to either convince ourselves of something or convince others of what we feel convinced of, we usually find ways to highlight the thing that we think is good and disparage the thing we think is bad, but we wind up making um, incongruent comparisons because both a vegan and a carnivore diet are restrictive in equal but opposite ways.
Yes.
But
Even keto.
and it's probable that somebody on a carnivore diet and on a different vegan diet could say, well, I feel more free in my lifestyle choices because I have to make fewer decisions based on the framework of the diet I've chosen, which is restriction. So it's like, it's all about your perspective and what your individual body is doing. Now, I personally do not think that a vegan diet is a sustainable long term thing. I also don't know for a fact that carnivore is a long term sustainable thing. But I do know that if you are choosing health at any end of the spectrum, you're going to have to pick and choose what restriction you act on.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So, because I have been listening to some other voices outside of the keto carnivore world. Oh my gosh. Can you believe it? There are other people outside of keto and
How
carnivore.
dare you?
But there's this reoccurring theme of how bad restrictive diets are. Like that's something, it's like, oh, that's a restrictive diet. It's like keto carnivore. These are restrictive diets. And it doesn't quite compute. Now, I mean, I understand the meaning behind it and what they're trying to communicate, I think. But then it's like, I can turn around and be like, well, you restrict certain things from your diet. What constitutes a restrictive diet? And it's like,
Yeah,
restrictive is bad. The more restrictive it is, the worse it is. The less restrictive it is, the better it is somehow. And it's like, I don't even think restrictive is a helpful classification at
terminology.
all.
Hmm.
I think we should focus on what restrictions are worth it. Because, I mean, there
I
are
do like
people
that
who say there
phrasing.
should be no restrictions whatsoever, and that's fine if that works for them. But most people recognize that there are some foods that make them feel less healthy and some foods that make them feel more healthy. And so typically people understand that reducing or restricting in a certain way certain foods is going to be better for them long term. So we
Hmm.
should think about what foods, what restrictions are worth it for us.
Hmm.
And then also what patterns of eating help us feel not restricted, because that's a completely different thing than if it is
Yeah.
actually physically restrictive or
Hmm.
like narrow food choice. Whether if,
Hmm.
just like Ellie said, and I think that's just a perfect example, she eats a carnivore diet because it feels less restrictive than a keto diet that actually includes all of the same things as the carnivore diet plus more. Like the list
Hmm.
of foods is actually more on keto, but for her, it feels less restrictive. And that it's just it's such a, apples and oranges list, not to, bring carbs into the situation, but uh, it's such something actually being restrictive, as in the number of foods you're allowed to consume, versus
Yeah,
feeling restrictive, completely different things. And the fact that we use the same word for both of them, I think it causes confusion. So it's like I wish there was a better way that we could communicate it. And I see people trying to communicate that it feels less restrictive, but using those words, I think, puts a stumbling block in front of people who are maybe are looking in from the outside. And when they hear someone say the carnivore diet is not restrictive, they think that's crazy. Of course, that's the most restrictive diet on earth right now. I mean, even like, especially when you look towards like the lion diet, it's like you only eat beef. That is so restrictive. Has nothing to
Yeah.
do with how restrictive it feels to a specific person, but on paper, that is a very restrictive diet. And so when someone just comes out and says it's not restrictive, you're like, well, that doesn't help. So anyways,
Yeah.
that's what's been kind of ruminating in my brain, and like, how can we communicate better the freedom that a certain restriction allows us, without
Right.
sounding, I don't want to, sounding almost silly.
Sure. Sure. That's a pretty steep challenge that you present.
Yeah.
And as you were talking,
Uh,
um, something came to mind, and that, kind of a lot of people discuss the whole like we may seek after pleasure or enjoyment, but really what motivates humans is pain avoidance.
mm,
So it's almost as if we have to frame it in such a way where I limit this to avoid pain,
mm,
because I think that that can speak to any number of different things. Like I'm choosing no so that I don't get pain.
mm,
And I think, like that it's negative. It doesn't tell you like the positive side of things, but more
right.
people are going to avoid pain than they are going to push through and seek pleasure.
Yeah, I
Like
think that's true.
people who sit down and don't like don't handle tasks that they're, responsible for, but they just sort of like sit down. They're avoiding the pain of actually just
Yes.
doing the thing, even though if they just pushed through a little bit, like the reward would be on the other side. But it's just I don't feel like it. Doing it feels like pain right now, therefore I won't do it. Or it feels discomfortable or uncomfortable.
Yes.
Dis-
Discomfortable. Good word. Well,
Welcome to the brain glitch of Lindsey.
it's kind of like restricting your sleep and getting up early in order to
Yeah.
get your workout in, or I don't know, start your work and get it done early so that you can have time later on in the day. You're restricting
Yeah.
something in order to get something later. And so
Right.
to frame our diet or lifestyle as if it doesn't have to have restriction is like, it's gonna fall flat for people eventually. You have
Yeah.
like let's be honest and say this restriction is better than this restriction. Restricting your sleep and getting up a little bit early so you can get XYZ done is better than procrastinating all day long and then having to rush and get it done and not
Right.
do
You restrict your
stuff.
time on the front end, or you restrict it on the back end for a
Exactly.
different,
So
in a different area. But what are you going to choose?
yeah. So when I hear any kind of promises from doctors or YouTubers or anything like that, where it's like, there's no drawbacks. There are none. Everything is perfect if you just do this. I'm like, let's just be honest. Let's talk about the pros and cons, because there are pros and cons to every diet. And we can argue about that until, the cows come home, about which diet has more pros and less cons and XYZ. But the fact of the matter is there are restrictions, and
Hmm.
different restrictions, and you get to choose which ones you want for the end results that you want.
Right. Like we follow the rules of the road by not and choose not to drive on sidewalks. That feels restrictive, but also the benefit of not running over a child on a scooter outweighs the restriction.
Yes.
you know?
Well, and then also I think about back when I first started the Atkins diet and I was addicted to sugar, it was
Yeah.
so restrictive not to eat the bread basket that came to the table at the restaurant, or it felt so
Hmm. Or tortilla
restrictive.
chips at the Mexican restaurant.
Yes. It felt so restrictive to, not stop and get whatever treat I was used to getting. For me now,
Hmm.
it doesn't feel restrictive, even though, I'm probably eating healthier now than I was then. I don't feel as restricted. So that's a really
Yeah.
important conversation to have, is like, kinds of things can we do, and what ways can we order our diet and lifestyle to feel the least restricted? And it's funny because feeling less restricted doesn't often come from loosening restrictions. You'd think the fewer restrictions we put on ourselves, the less restricted we would feel, but that's not always the case. I know for me that when I start, eating things that are not part of my normal diet and I let myself indulge, it's like there's some drive in there to like eat more. And so I'm like having to fight even more to not eat the stuff because I let myself be unrestricted for a certain amount of time. It's just counterintuitive. So anyways, I hope that sparks some thinking, and we can think about
That's a juicy steak to chew on there, Neely.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking about. So it's like choosing words, first of all, that are true and that communicate to people honestly, and that are persuasive. Because I don't think saying the carnivore diet or the keto diet is not restrictive, just on its face, is persuasive to someone who's on the standard American diet. Like it's to in their mind, it's like that's just not true. It's so restrictive. You have to say the restriction is worth it, and here's why. All right.
Or some variation therein.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's see here. Evelyn says every diet is restrictive. Agree. You can be restricted by where you live, how old you are, your tastes, your opinions, what you do and don't choose to restrict for your health. Yes, exactly.
That's a good point.
Exactly.
I don't love shrimp, so I don't eat shrimp. Does that mean I've restricted shrimp?
Oh, no, you can't restrictive diets are bad, Lindsey. You need to go eat shrimp.
I don't like it.
Laura Scott says I could have it tomorrow, but I'm not going to have it today. And tomorrow you can give yourself a pep talk again. Yeah, that's a good little trick to like to convince yourself that you're not restricted. It's kind of a trick to make you feel not restricted by saying, if I still want it tomorrow, I'll go ahead and have it. And that's a trick to make you feel that way, which I love tricks that make you feel not restricted. Like those are great for me. Let's see.
I kind of don't like it.
Singit says, and I must say that the keto donuts I've made were just fine. I saw carnivore pancakes today and figured creatively has made carnivore not feel
creativity.
Oh, creativity. Yeah, sorry. But come on, boundaries is a better word. Yeah.
I don't disagree. Boundaries is a very nice word. I think that is a word that encompasses it. If you're in the swimming pool, there's a lane line that's a boundary between the shallow end and the deep end. And if you have yet to, pass whatever test to swim in the deep end safely, then you've got a boundary there.
Yeah, I like that. And because the word restriction just has a negative connotation across the board. Restriction is bad. It's like,
yeah.
So boundaries is a better one because I don't think it has that same connotation. Let's see.
I don't actually dislike the word restriction, to be honest with you. It feels like more clear and more to the point. And I think that when we use the word like, oh, it's not that, then it's just like, well, why do you say that? It's not bad. It's not. It's almost as if you're like pleading with the person to believe you. But yeah. I feel like sometimes.
Yeah. I don't think restriction is bad. Like I restrict my children from all kinds of things because I love them. But something about it in the diet world is just, it comes with this negative connotation. Restrictive diets are bad.
But also Have we not, as a society, gotten to the place we are in right now because we have decided to avoid all of that, oh, bad language? Oh, it's bad language. We're
Yes.
just gonna tiptoe away from it.
Yes.
It's just like I
And I'd
struggle with
rather just
that.
be honest and be like, if I have to live on a restrictive diet to be healthy, then so be it. It's like I don't have to convince myself that it's not restrictive or anything like that. I just say, no, it's worth it to me because of all of these benefits. Cindy says, thank you both for sharing your vacation video.
Aw,
Great. I was living vicariously through you both. That was fun.
thanks,
Yeah,
Cindy.
we had a lot of fun with that.
Parkour.
Exactly. Um, Evelyn says, I've been watching Ketogenic Woman. She is amazing. And she's restricted by where she lives in getting all the ingredients needed for certain recipes. Yes. And that's okay. And
Yep.
she's probably got other ingredients that are more readily available to her because of where she lives, because it's just different than where other people live.
Right.
Yeah. And that's okay.
Or she
Um,
rethought something in a more creative way because of what she did have access to.
Jennifer really likes what she's restricted to. That's amazing. And that's the goal. It's like everyone, well, to be healthy, most people will probably have to have some kinds of restrictions. But
Yes.
to find the restriction that works best for you and that you like the most is obviously the best way to go. That's the not feeling restricted. If I could probably like construct a really healthy diet for myself out of
Mhm.
foods that I don't really care for, like sardines, all these things, and I could make it super healthy for me. But if I made that my diet, I would feel so restricted.
Yeah.
So restricted. But
Yep.
I don't have to do that. I can construct a healthy diet for myself out of foods that I do enjoy.
We like it.
Um, let's see here. Keto can almost be considered non-restrictive until you realize you can't reach target without fasting, egg fast, fat fast, BBBE, and sprinting, or else say keto is not a weight loss diet. Well, I know plenty of people who have reached target weight without those things. Not everybody. So I wouldn't say across the board that you can't reach target weight without those things. Maybe some people. And then there are definitely people who, just reach for keto is not a weight loss diet, which I actually agree with. You can construct a keto diet to be not a weight loss diet. You can also construct a keto diet to be a weight loss diet because there's infinite ways of constructing a keto diet. You could construct a keto diet by eating 10,000 calories a day and still gain weight easily. Or you could do a keto diet that's PSMF and
Yeah.
lose weight very fast.
Yeah.
um, Scott says, I'm obviously coming from my own frame of reference here, but when people talk about how restrictive diets are bad, it is possible they haven't experienced that food carb addiction. Yeah, I do
That's a
agree with
good
that.
point.
So in their mind, there's just the food restriction and
Mhm.
that feeling of feeling unrestricted in, getting rid of all those carb addiction issues. It's like they don't have that frame of reference. So to them, the restriction is not worth it. But
Mhm.
to someone who has experienced how, addictive carbs can be and how free you can feel when you get rid of them, then to them, the
Mhm.
restriction is worth it. The restriction is the same. It has to do with
Yeah.
what it feels like to the person, depending on what they're coming to the diet with. So
Yeah.
totally agree with that. Um, Scott says, I'm a person who can't stop when I start certain foods. Some people seem to be able to actually moderate and just have one cookie so they don't want to be restricted. Yeah. And people are different. And that goes back to the feeling restricted. What feels restrictive to you may not feel restrictive to another person. And it may have nothing to do with the food list at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and Jonathan Shane had said something in one of y'all's coaching calls about people being the abstainer versus the moderator, but his argument was that people were not macro abstainers
Yes.
or macro moderators, they were micro abstainers.
Yeah.
It's not that you abstain from 100% of the carbs. I mean, even if you are a carnivore, you're still getting carbs if you eat liver.
Yeah.
That's still there.
I've never heard anyone say that I can't eat eggs because that 0.7 carbs in the eggs just trigger me to want all the carbs.
Right. So it's like you can be a micro abstainer and say, I don't choose to eat the processed carbs or the honey, because the honey, even though it's derived from animal resources, kind of, like these group of things, they are, I abstain from them because I can feel triggered from having a teaspoon of honey,
Yeah.
versus a moderator who could say, maybe I can have a teaspoon of honey and not feel a thing. But you're not just like absolutely avoiding everything that has a carb in
Right.
it, because then you're just drinking water and eating salt.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
It's
even
like,
meat has glycogen in it. A little
yeah,
bit.
yeah. So like
So yeah.
how macro of a term are you using, or is it more of a micro
Right.
term?
Yep. Very good point.
Ellie says that she will eat my shrimp. You are
Excellent.
welcome to that.
Bubble Stuff says, my endocrinologist just says high protein and really hasn't said anything much more than that other than all sugar is evil. Yeah.
Well, and I think that whenever you have like somebody who's focused on hormones,
Yeah.
the fact that they are pushing protein and then saying sugar is not great, I feel like you've got a thumbs up person
Oh,
right there, because at least they are like, aware of how those things impact the body and how you
yeah.
choose to implement that based on their recommendations. That's,
Right.
that's
Well,
great,
and
because I feel like those two things matter a lot.
absolutely. And even when you say sugars are evil, it's like people don't say blood sugar is evil, because if you don't have any blood sugar, you're dead. So obviously everyone agrees that not all sugar is evil. It's just too much sugar is evil. And
Right.
anyways, so I'm sure that the endocrinologist knows all of this because they know all about insulin and anyways.
Sure. And I have a feeling it's in the context of
It's
the
not
nourishment you put into your body rather than what your body converts things to after the fact.
exactly. Okay. Sharon says not many diets allow bacon. Yeah, that makes it feel not restrictive. That's one of those great things about keto that makes it feel like not as restrictive of a diet, honestly.
It's a
Can you
diet fit for
imagine?
a king.
I mean, just think about the number of foods on a vegan diet versus the number of foods on a carnivore diet. The vegan diet's going to win with number of foods for sure, but I'm going to feel a lot less restricted, and that's my feeling on a carnivore diet. Like that's
Yeah.
because it's
I'm going to feel more satisfied on a carnivore diet.
yeah, for sure. For sure. Um Scott says it is my pet peeve with fitness experts and gurus. The whole everything in moderation mantra might work for people who easily put down their forks after a bite of pie. I eat the whole pie. Yep. It's like
You're in glad company, Scott.
for all of these things, they work for the people who they work for. And that's
Mhm.
all that can be said about it.
Okay. Okay. So Nisha, she put a video up, or a live stream replay or something like that, with her and, is it Coach Alyssa and Kim
Right.
Howerton? They were talking to coaches. And one of the things that they said is, if you don't like something, maybe that information isn't for you.
Mm,
Like if it completely just like goes against whatever it is that you're doing, and you feel like some sort of way about it, it's just not for you.
yeah.
And it's like the whole like everything in moderation, that is not a message for me at all, because I am like you, Scott. I cannot eat a bite of pie. Who can do that? Not Lindsey. So for me, it's like, well, even if I just portion out something and put it in a different vessel and only restrict myself to eating what's in that vessel, I still am not capable of stopping right there unless like there's some other outside forces or, like, oh, all of a sudden I'm, having some sort of visceral physical reaction to it. But I, that's not information for me, but I feel you on the pet peeves because that message is literally not for everybody. It's definitely not for people like us. So it gets very difficult to sit there and listen to these people who have that as their mindset when it's like, oh,
Well, but then
I really liked all of this stuff, but then over here you've got this one thing and I cannot with this one thing. So I got to let you go. I got to let you go.
But then it's like there's always those people for whom these things work.
Right.
And there are people that I see, at least, from the outside. I don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but, from the outside, it sure looks like it's working out for them. And it's like, that's great. And so if it helps somebody else that's like that, fantastic.
Thumbs
But
up, dude.
I do think it maybe puts stumbling blocks in front of other people for whom it doesn't work for. And I've had comments on my videos with Jonathan where I talk about adding some carbs in, eating up to like 100 carbs a day, which is still low carb. But people saying you're gonna like diabetics are gonna watch this and they're gonna start adding carbs and it's gonna hurt them. And I'm like, well, I can't control that. Like, I'm just sharing what I'm trying that's, seemingly good for me right now. Should I not share what's working for me and helping me because someone else for whom it might not work well might see it and they might try it? It's like I don't
probably should.
that. Yeah.
You probably should, because for that one person, the other 100 who could be helped by that, they don't matter. So just that one person, you need to modify your messaging for that one, because the other 100.
What I thought in response is like, well, but what about the people for whom this might help? We're not thinking about them. So there might be someone else that has hormone dysregulation or their thyroid is out of whack, and maybe adding a few carbs might help them. And it's like, I don't want the diabetic to fall off the wagon and go eat a bunch of carbs. Like, that's not my goal, but I can't worry about every individual person's issue. And that's why I'm so thankful that I'm not a coach or a guru or like trying to tell everybody what to do. I'm just sharing my own journey because
adventure.
That is a lot of pressure to, be on a platform and say, you should follow this. I'm not qualified. Let's just say that I'm not qualified.
I'm barely qualified to make the choices I make on a daily basis. What makes me think that I would be qualified to tell somebody else how to live their life?
Seriously, I
do sometimes do that.
Humans, actually now just 4 little humans that I have to tell how to live their lives. And that's enough. We're already over an hour and
we are, but I feel like this was such a great conversation. If you might not have more time, do you? Because you've got another call after this.
I've got a few more minutes.
Okay.
At 11:30, I have to hop off, but
skedaddle.
Yeah. Jackie said, I agree. Words matter. Connotation matters. Totally agree. I try not to use pejorative language around my eating. Try not to even use the word diet. Same. I try not to at home with the kids, especially because of the harsh emotional implications that pushes on my mind. Absolutely. 100% agree.
I have a coffee mug that says context matters, and I feel like I need to use it a lot more often because truly that's what context matters so much.
Yeah, and that's what Jonathan always brings home. And he was talking in his talk on the low carb cruise about what was the word? He didn't use
nuance.
Nuance, that's what it was. Yeah. But context would work there as well. Like your own personal context.
Right.
Ellie says, I can eat everything, but these foods allow me to be the best version of myself. Yep. Absolutely.
And we love the best version of you.
Yes. Let's see. I think the word pain and diet should be exchanged with resilience and nutrition education. Change that has options. Resilience and nutrition education change that has options. Yeah. I don't quite understand that. But
so I think it's resilience and then nutrition. nutrition education, because that's a
Yeah.
change that has options. I
Yes.
think that might be the way the phrasing might land.
Pain for resilience and diet for nutrition education.
Yeah,
Does that sound right? Yeah.
I think so.
Yes. It's not all perfect. I talk about my struggles. I don't want to play the pretend game on social media. Absolutely. And I feel like with these diets where we've seen such incredible life transformation from so many people, it's easy to get sucked into, I can only share the positives. Like I have to have my life transformation story, and there can be no negatives. It's there's a mentality there, and so I really appreciate Ellie sharing, just the life stuff, because it's not always easy. And
Right.
like I said before, it's like when people come into it expecting it to be all perfect, and
Right.
it not to be restrictive, and to have it fix all health issues, and to feel easy, and to never crave anything bad again.
Yeah.
Most people are going to be disappointed at some point in their journey, and you have to have something more to fall back on than this fixes all my problems. And the stories of, I never craved anything bad again, So
You are 1 in a million if that was your situation.
but
Congratulations.
it's easy on social media to feel like sucked into, I have to share only the positive stuff. So I
Right.
appreciate anyone, and I think there's more of that pressure when you are a guru and you've created a diet plan and you're selling a course or a program. It gets real hard to start sharing the negatives, especially when you're making money off of, this diet will fix all of your problems.
Right.
So I think
Right.
us vloggers, we do have an important job of, just bringing some reality to it. Because
Mhm.
the people that are selling it, and I don't, think ill of them. They're
Right.
doing what they believe in, and they're trying to make a living, which is totally legitimate. It just makes it more difficult to share the ins and the outs and the maybe less positive things.
Mhm.
So I think what we do is important. Us influencers.
I'd prefer to call us just standard operating moms.
There you go.
We're just
Um,
your standard operating mom right here. That's all we do.
yes. Yeah, Jackie says restricted to me is a negative connotation word. Totally agree.
I
Because
think sometimes a negative word can cause people to stop what they're doing and rethink, maybe,
yeah, I mean,
if
because
they're ready to hear that.
you don't see like the tagline on a diet, like this restrictive diet will blah blah blah. Like it's just not a word.
That's what we
Should we create the restrictive diet?
100% restriction for 100% freedom. Trademarked. Lindsey Murphy, Indigo Neely.
That's it. We're gonna make millions. At least we're honest. But that can be the restrictive diet. At least we're honest. Oh
No
goodness.
sugarcoating here
Yeah,
or on your
literally.
food either.
Because sugar is restricted. You give children restrictions in order to keep them safe and to grow up healthy. Children without
Yes.
restrictions are horribly behaved. Our restrictions are worth it. Yeah, I 100% agree. And even when you're thinking about like disciplining yourself, like with exercise or anything like that, it's like you have to put restrictions on yourself. I restrict my free time, by taking it up with exercise. Or another good example is if I want to be unrestricted playing the piano, I restrict myself to
To
practice the
practice.
piano. You don't just sit a child down in front of the piano and say, you are unrestricted. I mean, they're unrestricted in a certain way, but they are very restricted from making beautiful music.
And it also restricts them from having a good relationship with the other humans in the room.
So much restriction there from being unrestricted. Yeah. Oh goodness. Let's see. The health choices that you do consistently with the minimal negative emotion attached is arguably the least restrictive. Yes, I like that. Because you can be on a very seemingly unrestricted diet and still feel very restricted. And you can be
Yeah.
on a very seemingly restricted diet and feel very unrestricted. Like,
Liberated.
it's just the feelings and the reality are not the same. And so to focus on what do I need to do to feel not restricted is,
Mhm.
I think it's a better exercise in the long run. Let's see. Want to make sure we don't miss anything else. Yes, boundaries is a good word, and the swimming lane metaphor. Yeah. Yeah, well, and you can think of like traffic as well. As soon as you go to like a third world country where people don't follow traffic laws and there's not stop signs and like, I need the restriction. I need the restriction of the road lines.
So that I know that I'm not going to be bashed into intentionally or unintentionally or because of whatever. Also, that way I don't hit somebody else.
Yeah. Yes, freedom without restriction is chaos. Yep. We all make choices, and those choices allow us to become the people we are today.
And the choices we make
Absolutely.
today build a person of tomorrow.
Yes. Do you see any other comments that we should address real quick?
I think overall, this discussion has really been great. And if you are watching the replay, first of all, we appreciate you so very much. But we'd also love for you to just pop down into the comments section below and let us know your thoughts on the concept of restriction versus no restriction, and how the conversation can be applied in your world, or if you have completely alternate perspectives, we would love to hear your paradigm on those or your
Yeah,
context on those because context matters.
absolutely. All right. Well, I guess we will end it there. Thanks everyone for
Indeed.
joining us, and
Yeah.
we'll be back next week, same time, same place.